And welcome back to the Horror Academic. I'm going to start off with a couple of updates on this Day in the Life series. Um, I'm just going to do a couple more that are in our numbered stay home brackets because, as many of you know, I am in New Jersey, and technically speaking, I think last week they listed the stay home ban. Although we are still, uh, I think it's stage 1. So while I am still staying at home, I'll probably drop the stay home banner from this series. All that to say, I've decided to keep up with the Day in the Life show because I enjoy A, putting out more content, and B, doing some quick reviews, some not so quick, yeah, but mostly quick reviews of what I've been watching, what's new, and not just waiting for the monthly episode that I do to highlight a classic film. So I'm getting to talk about some newer films, getting to talk about some stuff I should have seen but didn't see, some random things I picked up over the years that I'm finally watching. And another thing I've had some episodes that showed some streaming content due to research and things like that. I'm gonna start adding streaming to more regular repertoire that I review, particularly stuff that's on Shudder, because I think as horror fans, there's a couple things that we all have in common, and a lot of us are signed on for Shudder, and as myself, and I wanted to highlight some of the programming on there that I've seen that I thought worth everybody checking out. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at some of the things that I've been really enjoying on Shudder. And one of the things that really made me sign up for the service was horror noir, which we've been talking about a lot, and some of the other documentaries that have been available on there. So I thought I'd take a little bit of time today to kind of some of the ones that I can recommend for those of you who have Shudder and are mostly watching either their original content. I know there's a lot of Joe Bob fans out there. I didn't grow up watching Joe Bob because we didn't have a lot of cable. I've talked about that a little bit. We had basic cable, and I did not get to see Joe Bob as a kid, so no nostalgia there for me. So I haven't really been following that. I've seen a few episodes, but so for those of you who have Shudder, or those of you who are thinking about and trying to decide if you want to sign up for Shudder, I will say they have really good trial programs that I recommend, hitting those up when you get a chance. Here's a couple of documentaries that I highly recommend, and this is what I've really been enjoying. I think if you follow me on Twitter, you know that whenever the opportunity comes up, I do point out some of the great stuff that I've been enjoying on there. So first off, I'm going to talk just briefly about horror noir since we've been talking so much about it, and I think everyone's been talking about it, and there's a reason for that. And the reason is it's an excellent documentary, and it takes something that we all think we know and makes us revisit and look at things from a different perspective. Horror noir focuses on blacks in horror and black horror from 1890s to the present day, just like the book did. And that means looking at films that aren't traditionally horror films, like Birth of a Nation, at the very start of the Hollywood Hollywood movement for filmmaking, and bringing that all the way to the present day with films that are definitely horror films, and how those are how there's been an evolution of black representation in horror films. And it goes up to Get Out, which is a really great kind of bookend. So if you haven't seen it, I really highly recommend. I know a lot of people just haven't seen it because they don't have the service. I know thanks to Black Lives Matter and a lot of other kind of groundbreaking things that are going on right now in the world, some service providers have been putting their content out there for free for you to look at to kind of learn more. And Shudder did the same with horror noir. There is ways to watch it now for free. I know that even if not, and this may expire soon, so I'm just going to put this out there as what's current. I've been recommending a lot of people to try it. I think they believe the code is shut in, one word, to get, I believe, at least a month of free Shudder. And I think they're using that and also other ways so you can just watch horror noir. So what's exciting about it is it takes two things. It's kind of got this very academic approach, and there's a group of women who are behind the making of this film who make that happen by doing diligent research. Means Coleman, who put out the original book, is very much a part of this production. So, I mean, there's a really solid group of people who did their research and made sure that this was accurate. And on the other side of that, you have this nostalgia that all of us can kind of grab onto of actors and filmmakers, black actors and filmmakers, talking about what it meant for them to see other black roles being played on the screen and what it felt like to be in a film kind of as a black character, and what they've seen and changes that have happened and what it was like in their perspective times. And I found it really fascinating, and I just highly recommend it. I think every horror fan, you really should take the time to watch, because if you're like me and you hadn't particularly really given a lot of thought to that perspective, because it's not, I'll be honest, it wasn't affecting me, sitting down and watching this really kind of sums it up. And then if you enjoy, I definitely say follow up with the book, because as you guys have seen for the past few months, it had a very large impact on the research that I ended up doing. So horror noir, definitely high honors. After I watched that, I started going through what other documentaries were on the service, and there were a few series that I really enjoyed. Some of them I think were from AMC, Discovery, kind of culminated from all different places. And those three that kind of really sum up things that I love, there was Eli Roth's History of Horror. And I do this because I know a lot of people are not Eli Roth fans. I am an Eli Roth fan. I've enjoyed all of his films. That's all there is to it. I'm not going to have to defend that. But I know that he's got a lot of haters out there, as they say. But History of Horror, it got a lot of slack for being so kind of things we've seen before. It's groups of filmmakers talking about the different aspects of the horror genre by recalling classic films, not so classic films, modern films, and talking about kind of these subgenres within the categories. It's all been done before, but I still enjoy hearing people that I look up to as a horror fan, as someone who looks to create content, someone who wanted to make films, people that I look up to. I always want to hear what they say about the genre. So I do enjoy that. I do also enjoy kind of any analytical looks at horror as a genre. So I appreciated that a lot. But yeah, I know a lot of people said there's nothing new here, which is kind of true. But there's some new faces that have been added that weren't here for the last cycle, the last couple times we've done this. So for that, I say check it out. Right after that, I highly recommend James Cameron's Story of Science Fiction. Now, this is a slightly different approach, where Eli Roth is present in some of the more interview-like segments of History of Horror. James Cameron does this as almost debates with other filmmakers. And then there are interspersed sections from actors, other filmmakers, and critics, and scientists even, talking about the impact that these types of science fiction films had on not just the genre of science fiction, but also, science, which was fascinating, and I enjoyed it. And again, it's the similar kind of thing where it's subgenre by subgenre for each segment, each episode. I really enjoy these types of things. If you like that, check it out too. If you liked History of Horror, it's a great follow-up to kind of see the science fiction component of that. And then the third one in those kind of series that they had was Robert Kirkman's Secret History of Comics. Well, first off, I believe they added the Robert Kirkman part of that after the series was out. I think this was also AMC, and I think that's why they added Robert Kirkman's name. But it was a fascinating look at the history of comic books, and where this is not necessarily genre-based as the other two series were. It's more each episode is a story and that could be the man behind Superman is one episode. It could be DC versus Marvel. There's a Stan Lee episode, but it's really like it's not just a Stan Lee episode. It explains Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's relationship. It talks about Marvel's origins, and it really explains a lot of things. You know that there's a lot of rivalries in that camp, and I think this did a really good job of laying those all out. There's also episodes that look at the history of Wonder Woman, which is fascinating and led me to watch more things about the history of Wonder Woman right after because it was such a good episode. I had seen, if you're a fan of Wonder Woman, I'm not particularly a fan of DC, but I do like particular characters. The Wonder Woman movie Blu-ray had an excellent documentary about the history. So that's another episode. There's an episode about the history of Image Comics, which was amazing. It's really like kind of, they each could have been their own documentary, and it's nicely encapsulated. There's a really interesting episode about how 9/11 impacted comic books. So that's Robert Kirkman's Secret History of Comics. So those 3 episodic shows I definitely recommend. If you have Shudder, they're there. Take advantage of it. Watch them. They're really good. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, to kind of catch everybody up on the documentaries that I love and Shudder, is this one's a little more recent. I think it came out in April or March. Is the Tom Savini Smoke and Mirrors. Now, I'm a huge fan of Tom Savini. I think most horror fans, particularly of my generation, he is the poster boy. As Forrest Ackerman was for like the Monster Kids, he was that guy who went from fan to Empire. And Savini is that, I think, for many of us. And I had seen every documentary I thought there is about Savini. I've seen numerous interviews, books, magazines, and I've spoken with him several times. I interviewed him. Unfortunately, he did not approve for me to use it outside of academic use, so I can't share that episode on my other show. But, just to say, I knew a hell of a lot about Savini, and I will tell you that this documentary taught me things about him that I didn't know, and that he had never really opened up about before, particularly about his past, his life, his experiences in Vietnam, where he references the impact that being present at Vietnam had on him in past documentaries. This one, he goes into it, and he explains in a new way and shows you the images he took, because he was a photographer when he was over there, and how deep that impact was on him. He also talks a lot about his family here. He talks about his divorces, his children, and these are very personal. And I think for most fans of Savini, we know so much about his career, and just to kind of key in more of these facts about his life was fascinating to me. And he's going through a period in his life where he's very aware of how all of the things that have happened to him lead to who he is and who he has been. And to see that, it was really, really interesting, and I loved it. And I highly recommend all fans of Tom Savini check that out. I also say that if you're a fan of horror and don't know a lot about Tom Savini, that's a good starting point, because you're going to get a lot of summary of all the things that we've seen before, that if you haven't seen them yet, it's a good way to learn. When I reference that, of course, I'm going to say that one of the top 5 horror documentaries ever was the Fangoria Scream Greats Volume 1, Tom Savini. And that, I watched that so many times. I had the tape. I rented it. Then when I worked at the video store, I bought it. And I played that tape till it stopped. And then I found it on Laserdisc. And then I copied it to DVD. And, it's a seminal piece. It's something that I think all of us could relate to as horror fans, of that love and a desire for all the things that he was creating and making, and it gave you that little bit of insight into the guy. So this is a great kind of bookend piece to Scream Greats, is to see him now, and to see him as an older man looking back at his career. So, not that his career is over. He's not doing as much makeup, but he talks a lot in this about his role as a teacher now, and the school that he works for it's the Tom Savini school, but you know, how that came about, how important that has become in his life. Just really cool. I really highly recommend all of these documentaries, horror noir, all 3 of the episodic series, and Smoke and Mirrors. They're all worth the price of admission, even if you pay for, like, do the 1-month trial. I say this would be a great way to fill out that time period. Of course, there's other great things on Shudder. I'm not advertising them. I'm not sponsored by them. I'm just saying get your money's worth. If you're going to do the free trial, get a whole bunch in. And if you're going to decide if you want to pay for it or not, I mean, that's up to you. But I hope I helped kind of steer you in a direction of maybe how to get you started. So yeah, look forward to more episodes where I will talk about other things I'm watching and streaming. I'm still going to be going through my DVD collection and picking out stuff that I never got to watch before. So stick around for those. These will probably end up being maybe 1 or 2 a week, these episodes now. One other last note, I will say that there's going to be some new stuff happening in the Day in the Life Horror Academic, and that is going to be some guests. So look forward to that. There's going to be some guests in the future doing reviews, and one of them might be very, very soon, as in the next episode after this. I hope you guys enjoyed my little run through of my queue of documentaries on Shudder and what I recommend you check out. And, you know, I will see you next time, where I will talk about other stuff that I'm watching here on the Horror Academic. Thanks.